Roland Willits, Old Men Stories. Visiting Ray Stauffacher, World War II pilot. Oh, I live up Iran.
Oh, up Iran.
Yeah, I live right next door to Ron.
We're the ones that has that big
We're real
jam
close
up
to
there.
Ron.
We have the
So
big
Maple
jam.
Grove Jam.
Yeah, we have it in our house. Rod and them, they come stay a whole week. We got a big backyard. I got it all wired for electricity, so all the motorhomes can plug in.
Well, can you save me a spot? I'll be there.
Oh, we got plenty of stuff. We had 20 motorhomes up there last. You got a motorhome?
Yeah.
We got plenty of room up there. But Rod knows, tell you, he's the first one there. Sure, big help for him.
Yeah, big. Yeah, he didn't. He told me about the Maple Grove thing in June.
Yeah.
Angie told me about it.
Yeah.
But they didn't tell me where it was at. It's at your place.
Our place. Got plenty of room in our backyard, water and sewer.
Wow.
Oh, we have every night we have a cookout.
Cool.
But Ron and Sharon there sure was a big help.
That is wonderful. Ron and Sharon are he and I formed a friendship this last summer. I did a video of him and put him on the web, and he's part of Old Men Stories. He's got stories on it. He's working with my radio show now.
Is he?
Yeah, we have a radio show called Old Men Stories Opry.
Huh.
Oh, I have an Old Men Stories radio show, but I also have one called we just started a new one called Old Men Stories Opry, which is music.
Yeah.
And Ron is the Ron is the, what would you call it? A host on it. Yeah, I'm a host. Ron's a host. Angie's a host. Clay Campbell, who is Kentucky Opry, is a host, and Bruce Nelson. You know Bruce.
Angie was to our party every day.
Yeah.
Even before it started.
Yeah. Well.
We had a heck of
See,
a
you
time.
even open your eyes a little. See, we're sitting right in the sun, guys, because in back of us we have shade. But if we go in the shade, our heads are sitting in the shade and our body's sitting in the sun. So here we are, we're just sitting in the sun and we're just sort of squinting.
In our jam, we had some other people come. They made pancakes for everybody every morning.
Wow.
Billy's charcoal burner. He loved it. Everyone from Wisconsin, they're jammers.
Oh, cool.
Ron knows who they are.
And I can tell Ron's here because there's all kind of noise. Yeah, they love to see. We have these called. We had a show yesterday called Annoyances, and it's all the other noise that happens with us.
Yeah.
You can't hardly see it, can you? Yeah, Ron's sitting behind the camera there, and he's trying to see. I think we got both of us, don't we? Doesn't it have both of us? Try the other one. Make sure the other one too, because I can only do it with me and with. Okay.
And when Billy bought one of those great big tents outside, what did you call them?
Canopies. Oh, big
And
canopy.
Sharon was there telling all the guys how to put it together. She knew.
Did you?
She would tell
Wow.
them how to do it.
Wow.
They did it. They know. There was a whole bunch of good workers up there. They just had them all up there.
They just had a lot of fun, didn't they?
I got a Ford A&M tractor going to be ready to go so Ron can drive it this year.
Oh, is that right?
Out the back, we got a lot of room out there.
Oh, okay.
Got dual seats on it. He'd love to have that.
And you're an old. By the way, you're an old World War II.
Yeah, I
pilot.
sure am.
And what was the training plane you flew in?
A BT-13.
BT-13.
We started out at a P-22. That was easy. It's almost a fabric-covered airplane. Really easy to fly.
Wow.
2 days you could fly that.
Wow.
Then after they mastered that, then he gave me the B-13. It had a 450 horsepower engine in it. Then it took about a week or so because you couldn't make any mistakes.
Couldn't.
Okay, then after you accomplished that, see, on all those airplanes, they had a pilot behind you and the the student in front. And you were
Right.
hooked up with the radio. He could tell you. So you could do everything you were doing, and he could tell you what to do. And he worked good now, right behind you. Those
Did you
instructors
have
was all right.
those cool leather hats? With
Yeah, I still got mine.
Oh wow. I still got my helmet, but my son has it. Son James. I got divorced, and my ex-wife, got all the pictures, but she gave my son James my old helmet.
Huh.
It's
In civilian life, we was in the one of the things was in pinball, jute boxes, and pool tables. I got 8 jute boxes at home.
wow.
The records, I must have 5,000 old Western Gene Autry's, those old
Songs?
records.
Oh, cool.
Plenty of them. I saved all to go to old favorites.
Oh, what we should do is we should take all those and put them and digitize them when we're there.
We could.
Now you get them digitized, and then they're there forever with that sound. You get them. Yeah, that's real nice.
Yeah.
They're there as long as you have the media and you can find it.
So I got more than. Can't even get through them all yet.
Wow. Wow. And you flew over. You flew over Germany, and I heard you gave me a little of the story. You flew a little from England, then you went down to Italy.
No, I never got to England.
Oh, where was it?
When we finished it at Wendover, Utah, was a big B-24 base. After they sent us to California, consolidated aircraft, then they started teaching us how to change engines and started to fly every day with a pilot who was going up, getting hours, then go to school, teach us all the things. There's a lot to know about flying with those things.
Wow.
And it's consolidated. After we was there about 2 months, then finally they sent us to Wendover, Utah, as a big B-24 base. Must have had 50 B-24s there, going every day, teaching pilots to fly. See? And then after you accomplished that, you'd be a second or a co-pilot. Then after you was that, they'd transfer you. But then a lot of times a good pilot would hate to miss you, so he didn't want to see you go. But then after you tell you wanted to be a pilot, then they'd start teaching you. You had a lot of responsibility to be a pilot.
Yes, you did.
You can't make it. You got to know everything. But everything you had it on a list of paper. You could go down the list, and change engines and change oil and turn the mags on. You had all that in front of you. See? And then we was there about 4 months in Wendover, Utah.
Right.
And then all at once they says to us, well, we're gonna go to Consolidate and pick up a new airplane, and we bought it from there to Wendover, Utah, gassed it up, and we pack all your bags, you're leaving. And we flew to Minneapolis, where Honeywell installed a new bomb site there.
Whoa.
Because they weren't, the airplane didn't come with that, but they installed it. And they checked the automatic pilot, and they also checked the compasses. And then after 1 or 2 days, I couldn't even call my folks at home because they didn't even have a telephone.
Wow.
So about 2 days later, we was gone to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. That was an embarkation center. We stopped there, see, and they filled all the airplanes up with powdered eggs and powdered milk and Spam, cases of it, see.
Whoa.
And
just so you could just barely make it take off.
well, yeah,
so, yep.
and they also put up 4 or 5 tents. Because when I was in the service, that's all we had to sleep was in tents. There was no
Yep.
barracks.
That's right.
Well, it was going so fast that they could put a tent up real fast. So it was at Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. We had the whole airplane full of Spam, powdered eggs, powdered milk, and cases of it, see?
Yeah, I was laughing because we went to the Spam Museum.
Yeah.
It's down on the other side of Albert Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in southern Minnesota.
And so then we headed off. We had to make 3 stops. We was going to North Africa, in the Azores,
Right.
in Newfoundland, and stop one day, get gas, and then the next day, if the weather was good, we'd leave. See, 3 airplanes together. I can remember one morning, there was a bad accident. It was, you know what a Lockheed Constellation is?
Yep.
That was a transport. I think he took off before us in the morning. And we was right behind him. And after he got up, he had trouble with his engine. He couldn't control the prop. He had a runaway prop. So he radioed, he's coming back. So they cleared the runway, wouldn't let us go until he got in. And so he was going to drain his fuel all over the water.
Right.
And I'll be damned so damn fuel didn't catch on fire.
Oh.
And he couldn't shut the fuel off. So he says, I'm going to have to. We heard all the conversation on the radio while we was waiting to go. And he said, I'm going to have to put her down in the water because he couldn't shut the air. The airplane was burning. He said, I'm going to put her right out next to shore so everybody can get out. Because out there, the water was only 6 inches deep.
Right.
For about 2 blocks out there, it was only a foot deep.
Right.
So then, the last we heard of him, he says, we're down. We never heard after that.
Oh, he
Whatever
was down
happened.
though. That's if he said he was down.
In the water.
Then they probably all got out.
Yeah, because then
If the pilot says they're down, they were lucky enough to make it.
So then the guy at the tower called you. Okay, you guys at B-24, you're free to go.
Wow.
But then I suppose they had a bunch of doctors and nurses in there. I don't know who else would go in a Constellation. That was a passenger plane, but that's what happened. So then we took off and went. See? We went to first base for 700 or 800 miles, and another was 800 or 900 miles, and the last one was 800 or 900 miles. Well, the last one was bad weather in North Africa, so they held us up a couple of days. See? So then we finally flew to North Africa. And oh, that miserable desert, I don't know why the hell anybody ever wanted that place.
And why you moved to the desert now, I don't understand.
Well, it's because the Germans, because the American troops and the British and the French had run the Germans out of there. They had General Patton had his tanks over there, and he
Right.
run the Germans all out of North Africa and out South Africa. And they didn't know what to do with the prisoners, so they put the prisoners on boats and brought them back here to the United States because they couldn't have nowhere to take care of them.
Right.
So, but how that sand would blow there in the desert. And we had covers over the engine. Every time you stopped that engine, you covered all those engines, buttoned them up with a real good cover. Keep the
Right.
sand out of them, because you couldn't.
You couldn't really keep the sand, but you could do a fair job.
Yeah. And then, one thing about it, you never would fly because there was so much sand in the air, it was hard on those engines.
Right.
So we wouldn't fly for 3 or 4, 5, 6 days a week because so much sand was blowing. And then you couldn't have that engine, that sand going down into the oil systems and stuff. And then the runways would get all full, about a foot of dirt, so the plows would have to plow out the runways. I wonder what the hell we was ever over there for. But we had to have a base someplace to go. And actually, when I stopped thinking about it now, that was the start of the 15th Air Force. See?
Right.
Because they were flying all those B-17s and 24s out of England. But they only had so far they could go into Germany. And they'd have to turn around and go home because there was out of gas. So then when they put the 15th Air Force into Italy,
That's when after they conquered Italy.
that's where
As soon as they conquered Italy, they just instantly made it into an area.
Italy, that's where we were. After the Germans run them out. After the Americans run them out. Then Hitler knew he had some problems because from there on we could go any place in Germany. We could reach all the targets.
Right.
But it was never touched before because the fighters out of England couldn't go that far.
That's right. Your fighter cover.
So once we got to, but there was only 15 Air Force in the 15th Air Force there in Cerignola, Italy.
Oh.
But it was the flying was good, conditions was good, was good. It was no sand flying or nothing. See, the weather was good every day. So then it took us a while to get. We had to put up tents and get organized. There was some farmer's field. We had the kitchen in there. That's all we had. We slept in tents. But when we got over there, we had all that stuff packed in the airplane, and they didn't trust those pot-bellied Arabs over there would take all the food if they could. So we slept in the airplane for about 3 days, 4 days.
Wow.
But it was good. We had plenty of room in there, that long castle, but nobody could come in there at night. See?
Okay.
Somebody had to protect that because it was just beginning. See, the camel riders didn't do anything over there.
No. Let's do this right this second for just one. Do our jump forward a little.
Jump
Like
forward?
that. Yeah, jump forward. Yeah, there we go. They get back in the sun. The sun has sort of crept down on our foreheads, almost covering our eyes. Okay.
So then, once we started flying, the first mission we ever went on was to the Polesti oil fields in Romania.
Wow.
Now that's where Hitler got 90% of his gasoline. So I think Hitler, his surveillance must have told him that the Air Force was starting out in Italy. So they had 200 big guns up there waiting for us.
Whoa.
Whoa is right. We didn't know that. See, they had P-38s would go up there and fly and take pictures.
Right.
So the first mission we went, we only went in at 20,000 feet.
Right.
That was bad. We lost 2 airplanes to German fighters before we ever got to the target.
Wow.
Shot down. And over the target, boy, that flak was thick. 26 was not enough. We never went back there. So anyway, we lost 2 more airplanes with flak. See? And when we're flying a mission, the minute you drop your bombs, you turn right now. to get away from that flak. If the flak's going over there, you're over here. You had to get away from that flak.
But you had to stay in a course long enough to so your
Drop
bombs,
your bombs.
Right.
You see, when we went to a target, we never flew directly toward the target. We'd go this way, then we'd go this way, you'd go this way, so the Germans never knew where we were going.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd have the fighters up there waiting for us.
Right.
So then the navigator would keep us going. Then they had what they call an initial point. That's the last turn you made, and then you started down that target. And when you left that initial point, you kept the same altitude, the same speed, everything, to give that bombardier a chance to get lined up on that target.
Right.
And he had a wind direction and temperature all counted in.
Right.
So you stayed there at about 20,000 feet, it's 180 miles an hour, and stayed right there. And then you get peppered. The Germans really had us nailed it across, so he couldn't change. And then after he dropped his bombs, he turned right away. To get away from then the flak was going there, but they caught up to us again. But those Germans must do it because they were good. That flak was out there straight out there. You looked like you could almost get out and walk on it.
Whoa.
Oh, God. But I was only about 19 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
See? I was in North Africa. I was 20 years old on my birthday. I said, what the hell away? But we liked flying those things. That was something. Flying that. And my dad often said, you're never going to amount to nothing. Well, I showed him I was going to.
You sure did.
So then that first trip over, and then after we peeled off the target, 2 B-24s ran into one another there. So we lost 6 out of the 15.
Whoa.
Never got back, see? But then we had all brand new pilots. But they should have never sent us at 20,000 feet, but maybe they didn't know either. From then on, we went at 25,000 feet.
Right.
That's all we could get out of those B-24s.
Right.
See? But then they squash along a little bit and slow up a little bit. But then right after Palestri, we left. It was a big place. The oil field must have been a half mile long and a half mile wide. You couldn't miss that target, see? It was big. We would start something fired, but then have it put out, have it all fixed. So then we left that target alone for a couple of days while we got some new airplanes. Right. But every day or so, here come a new B-24 out of the United States.
Right.
And get them ready to fly. Then we'd fly, but they had a lot of other targets. They had the Herman Gehring Tank Works, where they made tanks.
Whoa, yes.
So that was another target we had to wipe out because it was keep making tanks. The minute we could shut those tanks down and cut their war effort down. Then they had a wider newsstand, a ball bearing factory. It was after them. We had about 50 targets that hadn't been touched. Then they had a rubber factory, made rubber tires.
Wow.
And that was another one. And there was another place where they made airplanes, Messerschmitts. We was after that target. See? But the Germans were smart. They'd put up a smoke screen. We got over there, we couldn't find the target. It was all smoke screen. We'd drop our bombs anyway. But right on our tail, there was a P-38. Would take pictures of everything. By the time we got back, we'd know how we done. See?
How far could the P-38 follow you? They had pretty good
all
range.
the way.
They could. They were the first. They were first or second group that actually had great distance on them.
But they couldn't wait longer than we did. You know, they'd wait a half an hour after we did because they could catch up to us.
Yep.
Because B-24 we could only average 160, 170 miles an hour. The P-38 was a couple hundred. They'd catch up to us.
Right.
So then they know the target was going to go, where it was going to hit. They'd take good pictures.
Wow.
And then we was handling a lot of losses. Those German fighters was up there picking those B-24s off. You see, on the B-24 had 12 50 calibers on there.
Right.
Okay, just think those German fighters, when they was going to attack the B-24, they had a lot of guns they was facing.
Yes, they did.
And then if you had about 15 or 20 B-24s all in a formation, boy, that guy had 1,000 guns facing him.
Just anywhere
fighters.
near it. It's all there. Just big. The
German fighters had bigger guns than we did. They had 125 millimeters.
Right.
They could, at 750 yards, they could peel away, whereas the 50 caliber wouldn't go that far.
Right.
So they had a big advantage. See? And they were picking the bombers off all right pretty fast. But nothing you could do. You had to keep on it going. But we'd get lucky and get a few of them. Some pilot would make a mistake. He got too close, and boy, they'd nail him with those 50s. But we'd never know. See? Even I got some pictures I can show you of Messerschmitt ran into a B-17 up there, almost cut it in half. But the airplane got back.
It did. Wow.
Yeah, he got back right. So then after those targets, then finally they used to send the P-51s back, come along as escorts. They could only go so far, and they would be out of gas, and they'd have to turn around and go home. But the German fighters would be over there waiting for the P-51s to go home, because they didn't want to bother when the 51s was there. After the P-51s, then those German fighters would come. Then we had to fight for our life. Just made that. I sometimes wonder how I ever got through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were one of the lucky ones.
I guess my mom prayed a lot.
Yes, isn't it? My mom still prays for me. She's 97, a few years older. She's the old lady. I mean, you're 92.
Yeah. And we were flying 7 days a week because we were short on airplanes.
Wow.
But see, those guys in England, they were flying too, but they couldn't get as far as we could.
Right.
See? And we could get into wider newsstand. We never bothered the cities and the towns, because we had no qualm with the German people. All we was worried about is destroying their targets.
Right.
See? And if you ever had to bail out, what you should do is when you got to the ground, take your parachute, wad it up, and keep it with you. Because those German people, including those young girls, they'd love to get their hands on that parachute. So they'd take you into their house and put you up, because the Germans would be looking for you.
Wow.
See?
But you were in Romania more than you were in Germany.
We was all over. We was in...
Yeah. Everyone in the other countries usually were much more sympathetic than the Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they used to take us in. They used to hide us in the basement, and then there was a French underground that would come and get the pilots and get them back to Italy.
Oh,
They had ways
cool.
of doing it, see? Because they had the uniforms and they know where it was. But that's what those. When I hear that song "Fraulein," it makes me sick every time. Those people, German people, would love to get that parachute and give it to them. See?
It's good nylon material.
Yes, it was. Because they didn't have nothing like that. See? So then, as the targets went on, the P-51 used to come as far as they could go, and then they'd have to turn around and go back home. Then they got smart and started carrying 2 wing tanks, 250 gallons of heat on each wing tank. Then the P-51s could go all the way to the target with us and stay right there, and then come on back with us. And those German fighters used to be out there just waiting for those P-51s to leave. Wait a minute, what's going on here? They're not leaving now, see? And they had those belly tanks. It took us too long to figure that out. And then they got P-51 stuck with us, and that was another story. The German fighters never bothered us anymore, because they had to get past the P-51s first.
Right.
And they had their hands full. Then attack the bombers. See? So then P-51, the German fighters would, after they attacked the bombers, they'd go down the ground and get gas. And then we'd back up on their turn, they'd get us again.
Right.
That was, the losses were terrible high.
Oh boy.
But we had to keep on going.
Yep. Let's just move one more forward a little. One more, because that sun. We're in Arizona sun here, and there you go. You're just up there. We got we're not in the shade.
In the infantry.
And your eyes are all watered from the sun. We're suffering here and giving it to
Well, maybe
people.
I tell them to sing all my poor buddies. You know, it's hard
Yeah.
to be in a tent with a guy and whenever an airplane got shot down, you always stood there and counted how many chutes got out, so you know how many of them got out and were prisoners of war.
Yep.
You wanted to know that. See, it's nice to know when you got back, you got interviewed. You know how many chutes got out, and they know those guys are all safe. They're in a prisoner of war camp.
Yep.
See? So then the infantry kept on moving up, and finally, after so many months, they got into with Russia. They got into Berlin. They finally got a hold of Hitler because he killed himself.
Yeah.
And the war was over then, see? So here we had all these B-24s here with nothing to do. So within 4 or 5 days, I was on a new B-24, flying it back to the United States.
Wow. We're going to end right there for a little while.
Yeah.
So, say your name and say, Old Men Stories.
Yeah.
Okay. Give your name and say Old Men Stories right to the camera.
Yeah. Now?
Right this second.
What name you got? Is that Heisey, Billy? Ray Heisey. I was a first lieutenant.
Say Ray Heisey, Old Men Stories.
Yeah.
I was a first lieutenant.
I was in North Africa. I was a second lieutenant. $17, about 20 years old, flying a B-24.
Wow.
And how that sand used to blow there.
Yep. And we we'll take it up again in a couple minutes here. We're just going to get out of the sun a little and cool off, and then we'll start.
Well, maybe Billy's got an umbrella.
Well,
Okay.
You know, Ron, I'm surprised nobody has come and pitched a tent there. They could do it.
sure they could.
We had bathrooms. You could use the house for a shower.
Cool.
We slept in them for about 4 years in Uncle Sam.
Yeah, they have the tents now are just awesome
Yeah, but
compared to what I lived in World War II tents.
Did you?
When I was growing up, I was born in '41,
Yeah.
and all the used tents came back. I remember one time. You remember the sleeping bags they had? They were like mummy bags,
Yes.
and they had that wool
Mummy
inside. What?
Yeah.
The mummy bags,
Yeah.
and I fell asleep in one. I had just my face in there, and it was cold that night, so I really got all thing, and I didn't anything, and somehow in the middle of the night I rolled over.
Huh.
I was never so terrified in my life. I got sort of claustrophobic at that time for really small spots because I rolled over and I couldn't breathe, and I didn't know where I was, and then I remember where I was, and I couldn't. Oh, geez, it was like coming out of a coffin. It was terrible. So yeah, World War II it was built for survival only.
Yeah, they had to make it as fast as they could.
Yep, they did. They did, and
That's all we slept in was tents.
yep,
Back in Africa, it was terrible. The wind would blow, the tents would be full of sand, and
yep.
you could shovel it out, get ready to go the next day.
It'd be right back in there.
Yeah,
they
and the
just
engines was
yep,
all covered. It had to cover them.
Yep, yep.
We didn't fly only about a half a dozen missions out of there.
Right.
It was too rough. But by the time they had conquered Italy, then we had a place to go.
That's right. Now tell me, after Italy, you thought you were on your way back, and they didn't let you go, did they?
Well, we went back and had to get those airplanes out of there. So we flew a B-24 back to Wendover, Utah. God, they had hundreds and hundreds of B-24s all from. They had to park them someplace. That was a B-29 base. The war was still going on in Japan. So they started to teach us to fly B-29s. They didn't want to waste it because we had 4 engine time, which was all right. That was B-29 was a nice airplane. It had heated companions. You didn't have to wear a flying suit. It was a nice airplane. It was big and walk around in it, see? And it even had high pressured oxygen.
Right.
It was real good.
You could fly really high then.
In the back seat you had an engineer. He kept track of all the instruments. The co-pilot and pilot didn't have to do that. He did it all.
You had a navigator.
He took care of everything. He was all on an intercom all the time, see? How much pressure he had, how much oil pressure, and how fast he was going, and put the automatic pilot on. That was real good. And that B-29 was a good airplane. So they were teaching us to fly. It was a little bit tricky. It was different. But so all at once, when I was over there, they wanted some volunteers, see? But he says, you can't have any kid. Lots of guys have relatives that come stay with them while I was in Wendover, Utah. I didn't have nobody to go home to. So I said, I'll go. I didn't know where I was going. He says, have your bag packs. Tomorrow morning after chow, we'll be ready to go. So then after chow, you went in there for a briefing, where you was going to go and what you was going to do. And then we do, see? And then we discovered it had an atomic bomb in that airplane, a 2,000 pounder that was bigger than the first 2 they had dropped. Remember, this was only a week after they dropped the one on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, see?
Yes.
So that's why they wanted to get that out and get it over there, because those was only 1,000 pounder. Boy, that was a big thing in that thing. And we also had 250 more gallons of gas in the fuel tank in Bob Bay doors. We left that morning, and I said, how did I get this job? I hadn't even been qualified as a co-pilot yet. But the guy I went with was a full colonel, and I knew he knew what he was doing. I said, he only had it, and he was good. Damn good pilot, see? He knew how to do everything. He didn't have to ask for nothing. So we flew from here to Panama. We settled down there for the night. And that airplane was so overloaded, He got that up to 140 miles an hour before he could rotate it. That's the fastest we ever did that before. I says, is this going to be all right? But he must know because we finally got our airborne. But it was so overloaded with that big bomb and gas, it had to get that fast, otherwise it wouldn't get off the ground.
Yeah.
So then we got to Panama, we loaded again. It was a 4,000-mile trip over water. I'd never been over water that long before, see. We had 2 navigators. You can't make any mistakes out there, see. So then, the next morning, we headed for Tinawan. I'd never been there before. Oh, there was only one island back there that you could hit for a point. If you knew it was on that, it was okay. Because you knew the wind could drift you off sideways. You couldn't tell the difference. You get lost. So you had to be a good navigator. 2 of them. So, when we was about 2 hours off from landing at Tinawan, the radio operator heard that Japan had surrendered. Well, you didn't know if it was just a rumor, not see. Well, we couldn't do nothing but keep on it going. Bob wasn't ready to go. Wasn't ready to drop it. So we kept on it going. And when we got to Tinawan, we found out the war was over. So that airplane, they towed it to the end of the field. I never know whatever happened to that. It was a 2,000 pounder. I never saw such a big thing about that big around. Oh, that was, they call it a fat boy. And for fun, in New Jersey, when they made that bomb, it says for Tokyo Joe. It wrote on the side of the bomb. See, wow. That's what it was. We didn't. He would have had that. I'd like to saw him use that, but the war was over before we got to use it.
Oh, okay.
And then we fooled around there at Iwo Jima. I got some pictures of it. Then we got another B-29 and flew back to the United States again to Wendover, Utah again. Back where we started from all the beginning. It was a big base, and they had hundreds of B-24s there. Then they wrecked them all. Too bad. Then the B-29s was there. That was a good airplane though. See, that atomic bomb had to get up to 36,000 feet to get it when it dropped this way. It had to turn itself like that. So you had to get up at high altitude, otherwise it wouldn't turn. See? That was up there long. And the pressurized, the B-29 was pressurized. But when you got that high, you got off that pressure, because if something happened, that airplane could explode if you had all that pressure on the inside and on the outside. So you got on the oxygen and you got off that high pressure. Looks like these airlines nowadays, if they hit a bird or something, they can explode. See, right. Nowadays. So they got us off high oxygen. But I hadn't had any experience at high oxygen, high altitude. Wow. See? So
you had all those opportunities.
Well, a B-24 would never go that high.
No, it wouldn't. No.
See? We'd like to. If they could have
bought that would have been great, wouldn't it?
If they could have bought
got above the flak and got above the fighter planes, that'd have been awesome.
Would have been good. They never had it. But the B-29 was made during the war and after the war. It was a good airplane.
Yep.
But it was different to fly. But that guy back there was having all the controls. You had to listen to him. He'd tell you everything that had to be done.
All you had to do is just sort of, almost read magazines.
Yeah. So I had no business going there as a co-pilot. Wasn't even checked out yet, but I don't think they checked me out.
You had a good time.
I went.
And you lived. You lived to tell the story. Yeah. And that's a true OMS story.
That's Colonel Gladford. He was a good pilot. He knew how to do it.
Okay, say your name again and say OMS Stories.
OMS Stories. Ray Heisey.
Thank you. Ray and I thank you.
Okay. Got a good woman out to help me along. The VA's been good to me. Yeah. I don't ask for much, but
what a helpmate, huh?
Old men stories. Give me one more day. At our age, that's cool.